The assignment board flickered to life in the Academy's main hall, and the usual chatter died instantly. Cadets from 20 different species crowded around the holographic display, their various eyes widening as they read the mission details. Vortis 7. The name alone made veterans go quiet. Ryan Cole pushed through the crowd, squinting at the screen. His human eyes scanned the brief quickly. Solo retrieval mission. Abandoned research station. Classified data cores. No scheduled extraction. He grinned and raised his hand. I'll take it. The silence got heavier. A Taurian cadet with 4 arms turned to stare at him. You understand what Vort 7 is? Yes. 12 missions sent. 0 returned. The planet kills everything. Ryan shrugged. Sounds like a challenge. Plus, I grew up on a colony doing survival training. This is basically camping with extra steps. Nobody laughed. They just slowly backed away from him like stupidity might be contagious. Commander Hayes called Ryan into his office an hour later. The human officer looked tired, older than his 50 years. He gestured to a chair and pulled up files on his desk screen. Cole, I need you to really think about this. Vort 7 isn't just dangerous. It's a death sentence with paperwork attached. Hayes swiped through images of the planet. Purple forests that looked beautiful until you noticed the bones scattered underneath. Rivers that steamed with chemical runoff. Storm clouds that crackled with green lightning. The atmosphere will burn your lungs. The water is acidic enough to dissolve most species. The local fauna hunts in packs and can tear through Militara armor. The last team we sent lasted 4 hours before we lost their signal. Hayes looked directly at Ryan. The only reason this mission exists is because regulations say someone has to attempt recovery. Command expects whoever goes to die, they've already written the casualty report. Ryan leaned forward, studying the images. What kind of fauna are we talking about? Predators or scavengers? Hayes blinked. That's your question. Not how to survive the toxic storms or the acidic water. Well, predators are territorial. If I respect their space and don't act like prey, they might leave me alone and the water thing. I mean, how acidic are we talking? Like, compared to what? Compared to what? Hayes pulled up chemical analysis. It'll dissolve Zacharian kitten in under a minute. Yeah, but Zacharians have that calcium-based exoskeleton, right? Acid eats that. Human skin is tougher than people think. We evolved in oceans that had all kinds of nasty stuff in them. Ryan scrolled through the data himself. This looks about like swimming in a chlorinated pool that hasn't been balanced properly. Uncomfortable, maybe a rash, but not fatal. Hayes stared at him. You're actually serious about this? Commander, look, I'm bottom of my class in tactical theory and quantum mechanics, but survival training, that's what I'm good at. My colony had bears, wolves, and weather that could kill you in 6 different ways. I know how to live in places that don't want me there. Ryan met his eyes and honestly, sir, if nobody expects me to come back anyway, what do I have to lose? The commander was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed and approved the assignment. 2 days later, Ryan stood in the equipment bay, packing his gear. The standard issue survival kit sat ignored on the bench. Instead, he filled his pack with things that made the quartermaster's antenna twitch with confusion. Fishing line and hooks, a compact rod that folded into segments, water purification tablets rated for Earth's worst swamps, a fire-starting kit with waterproof matches, protein bars that could survive a nuclear blast, a solar charger for his equipment, and at the very bottom wrapped carefully his father's old camping knife. Cadet Cole, those items are not regulation for hostile environment deployment. The quartermaster clicked. Yeah, but regulation gear assumes I'm fighting the planet. I'm planning to live on it. Big difference. Ryan added a small cookpot to the pile. You got any seasoning in stores? Salt. Maybe some dried herbs. The quartermaster just walked away, muttering in his native language. Other cadets came to say goodbye. Most looked at him like he was already dead. A few seemed genuinely sad. One Vraxian clasped his shoulder with a manipulator tentacle. You are braver than I understood, human. May your ancestors welcome you swiftly. Thanks, I think. Ryan hefted his pack. See you guys in a few weeks. Ryan, Commander Hayes appeared in the doorway. A word. They stepped into the corridor. Hayes handed him a small data chip. Personal emergency beacon. It's not regulation, and if you use it, I'll deny giving it to you, but if things go completely wrong, hit it. I'll figure out a way to get you out. Ryan pocketed the chip. Appreciate it, sir, but I'll be fine. How can you be so confident? Because everyone keeps telling me this planet will kill me, but all the briefings say it has breathable air, drinkable water if you filter it, and lots of wildlife. That's not a death world, sir. That's just Earth before we paved it. Ryan smiled. My grandpa used to say, the difference between an adventure and a disaster is your attitude. I'm choosing adventure. The transport pod was cramped and automated. Ryan strapped in and watched through the small viewport as the academy fell away. The jump to Vort 7 took 6 hours. He spent it reviewing his data pad, making notes about the local ecosystem, and eating a protein bar. When the pod hit atmosphere, alarms started screaming, radiation warnings, atmospheric toxicity alerts, predator signatures detected, temperature fluctuations. The computer's calm voice listed 17 different ways he was about to die. Ryan turned off the audio warnings and watched the planet grow larger. The purple forests looked dense from orbit. He could see rivers cutting through the landscape and mountain ranges that probably had caves. Good shelter options. The pod's retro thrusters fired hard, slowing their descent. Tree branches scraped the hull as they dropped through the canopy. Impact came hard enough to rattle his teeth. The pod bounced twice, then settled with a groan of stressed metal. Everything went quiet except for the ticking of cooling engines and a steady drip of something on the hull. Ryan unstrapped and checked his gear. Everything secure. He pulled on his pack, grabbed his rifle, and hit the door release. The hatch hissed open and warm, humid air rushed in. It smelled like rotting vegetation and something musky animal. He stepped out onto purple moss that squatched under his boots. The forest around him was massive. Trees the size of skyscrapers reaching up into permanent twilight. Something howled in the distance, a sound that echoed through the canopy. Ryan took a deep breath. His lungs burned slightly, but nothing worse than jogging at high altitude. He pulled out his compass, oriented himself toward where the briefing said the research station should be, and started walking. Behind him, 3 kilometers away and completely unaware, Commander Hayes sat at his desk and marked the mission file. Status, expected casualty. Await confirmation. Above him, through gaps in the canopy, Vort 7, 3 moons began to rise. Ryan's first night on Vort 7 taught him that the briefings had understated several things and overstated others. The toxic spores everyone worried about. They made him sneeze twice and gave him watery eyes for about an hour. Like walking through ragweed in late summer back home. The acidic water that supposedly dissolved flesh, it stung a bit when he washed his face, similar to getting salt water in a cut. Annoying, but manageable. The predators, though, those were real. He'd found a decent clearing about a kilometer from the crash site and set up camp properly. Fire pit dug and ringed with stones. Gear hung from branches to keep it off the damp ground. Shelter built against a massive tree trunk using the pod's emergency tarp and local branches. His father had taught him that comfortable camping was safe camping because comfort meant you could think clearly instead of just surviving. The fire crackled as he cooked dinner. A protein bar heated over flames tasted better than eating it cold. A trick that made terrible rations almost pleasant. He'd boiled water from a nearby stream, filtered it twice, and was letting it cool in his canteen. The first sip had tasted weird, metallic, and sharp, but his stomach handled it fine. That's when he heard the breathing. Not his own, something big just beyond the fire light. Ryan didn't freeze or panic. He'd grown up knowing that prey animals freeze and predators notice fear. Instead, he calmly reached for his rifle and stood up slowly, making himself look bigger. "I can hear you," he said, voice steady. "This is my camp. I'm not looking for trouble." The breathing stopped, then branches cracked, and something massive pushed through the undergrowth. It looked like someone had taken a grizzly bear, covered it in midnight blue fur, added an extra set of smaller front legs, and given it teeth that belonged on a shark. The creature was easily 800 pounds of muscle with eyes that reflected the fire light in an eerie green glow. Its claws dug furrows in the purple moss as it approached. Ryan kept his rifle pointed down but ready. "Hey there, big guy. You're beautiful. You know that? Apex predator, probably territorial. This is your hunting ground, isn't it?" The creature growled, a sound that vibrated in Ryan's chest. It took another step forward, testing him. "I get it. Strange animal in your territory probably smells weird. Acting all wrong." Ryan slowly reached into his pack without taking his eyes off the predator. "But here's the thing. I'm not prey and I'm not competition. I'm just a visitor who wants to share this space peacefully." His fingers found what he was looking for. The half of his protein bar he hadn't eaten. It wasn't much, but it was food. He tossed it gently toward the creature, landing it about halfway between them. The predator's head snapped down, tracking the movement. It sniffed the air, then looked back at Ryan with what might have been confusion. "Yeah, I know prey doesn't offer food, but like I said, I'm not prey." Ryan slowly sat back down, making himself smaller, less threatening. "That's yours if you want it. No strings attached." The creature watched him for a long moment. Then it moved forward, surprisingly quiet for something so massive, and sniffed the protein bar. One bite and the bar disappeared. It sat back on its hunches, looking at Ryan with an expression he couldn't quite read. "Good, right? Yeah, those things are loaded with calories. We make them for long deployments." Ryan stirred his fire, keeping his movements slow and predictable. "You can stick around if you want. I'm not going anywhere tonight." The predator didn't leave. It circled the camp once, staying just outside the fire light, then settled down about 20 feet away, still watching, but no longer aggressive. Ryan finished his own dinner and banked the fire for the night. "I'm calling you Bruno," he said to the creature. "You remind me of a bear from Earth stories. Sleep well, Bruno." The predator's eyes glowed in the darkness, unblinking. Morning came with strange bird calls and the smell of damp earth. Ryan woke to find Bruno still there watching the camp. He went about his routine naturally, heating water for drinking, checking his gear, eating breakfast. Every so often, he'd toss a bit of food toward Bruno, never making it a big deal, just sharing like you would with a camping buddy. By the third day, Bruno followed him openly. When Ryan walked to the stream to refill his water, the massive predator padded along behind, staying about 30 foot back. When Ryan made camp that evening, Bruno settled closer, maybe 15 feet away. "You're curious about me, aren't you?" Ryan said, setting up his cooking pot. He'd caught some fish from the stream using his folding rod, and they were sizzling over the fire. "Never seen anything like a human before. We're weird, I know. We sweat instead of panting. We walk on two legs, and we cook our food." Bruno's nose twitched at the smell of cooking fish. "Want to try some?" Ryan pulled one fish off the heat and let it cool on a flat stone. Once it stopped steaming, he tossed it toward Bruno. The predator caught it midair and swallowed it whole. Then it sat up straighter, making a sound that might have been approval. Cooked food tastes better, doesn't it? Yeah, humans figured that out a long time ago. Ryan ate his own fish, savoring the simple meal. It tasted like trout, flaky and mild. This planet's not so bad, Bruno. Dangerous, sure, but dangerous just means you need to pay attention. Over the next 2 days, a routine formed. Ryan would explore during the day, mapping his surroundings and moving slowly toward the research station. Bruno would follow, sometimes disappearing into the forest, but always coming back. At night, they'd share a campfire and whatever food Ryan had caught or prepared. Ryan learned Bruno's body language. Ears forward meant curiosity. A low rumble meant something else was nearby. The way his fur bristled indicated direction and distance of threats. It was like having a very large, very effective early warning system. Bruno learned that Ryan's camp meant food and safety. Other predators gave them a wide berth once they scented Bruno's presence. The massive creature had claimed Ryan as part of his territory, and on Vorta 7, that claim carried weight. On day 5, Ryan finally set up his communication equipment. The research station was still a day's travel away, but he wanted to let command know he was alive before they completely wrote him off. He positioned the camera on a stable rock, checked the angle, and hit record. Bruno lay beside the fire, grooming his fur with a massive tongue, completely relaxed. "Hey, command, it's Ryan Cole, so I haven't made it to the research station yet. Ran into some terrain issues and decided to take it slow." He gestured to Bruno, who looked up at the camera with mild interest. "I wanted to show you guys the local wildlife. This is Bruno. He's what the database calls an Ursenthrax apex predator, about 800 pounds. We're camping together." Bruno yawned, showing teeth that could tear through steel. "He's actually pretty friendly once you establish that you're not food and you're willing to share. I've been documenting his behavior and the local ecosystem. Lots of good data for the xenobiology department." Ryan smiled at the camera. "Anyway, I'll send regular updates. The planet's challenging but manageable. Talk soon." He ended the recording and cued it for transmission. The signal would take a few hours to reach the nearest relay, then another few to get to the academy. Bruno rolled onto his back, all 4 legs in the air, looking about as threatening as a puppy. Ryan laughed and settled in for the night. Junior Communications Officer Thals nearly dropped his drink when the transmission from Vort 7 arrived. His secondary arms fumbled with the console while his primary hands pulled up the video feed. On screen, a human sat comfortably beside a crackling fire. Next to him, close enough to touch, lounged a fully grown anthrax. The predator was grooming itself while the human talked casually to the camera. Commander Hayes Tallies croaked into his comm. "You need to see this now." Within minutes, half the communications department crowded around the screen. They watched in silence as Ryan demonstrated how to identify edible fish in Vort 7 rivers, occasionally reaching over to scratch behind Bruno's ears like the creature was a pet. "He's alive," someone whispered. "The human's actually alive. That's anthrax." Another officer said they're documented as hyper-aggressive territorial killers. "He's petting it." Commander Hayes pushed through the crowd and watched the video twice. Then he pulled up Ryan's file and stared at the casualty report he'd signed 5 days ago. "Get me a direct comm line to him," Hayes ordered. "And someone copy this to the xenobiology department. They're going to want to see this." The video should have stayed internal. Military transmissions were supposed to be classified, but someone in the xenobiology department shared it with a colleague at another academy. That colleague showed it to his students. One of those students had friends on a science vessel who thought it was fascinating. Within 48 hours, Ryan's camping trip with Bruno had spread across 3 solar systems. By the end of the week, it had gone viral across the entire Galactic network. Ambassador Krell watched the video for the third time, his compound eyes reflecting the screen's glow. Around his office, several aides stood in uncomfortable silence. "Explain to me," Krell said slowly, "how a single human cadet is surviving on a planet where we lost a fully equipped military team." "We believe it is related to human evolutionary advantages," one aide offered. "Earth is classified as a high-gravity death world with extreme environmental variations. Humans evolved to handle conditions that would kill most space-faring species." But the Ursenthrax Krell gestured at the screen where Bruno was now playing in a river while Ryan narrated those creatures have killed trained soldiers in environmental suits. "Yes, but the human is not wearing an environmental suit." The aide pulled up comparative analysis. "The suits mark wearers as foreign. The local predators attack anything that smells wrong or acts like prey. This human has adapted to the environment instead of fighting it." Krell watched as Ryan waded into the river using a primitive rod and line to catch fish. The water that dissolved Zakarian Kitten just made the human skin slightly red. Bruno watched from the shore till swishing with what looked disturbingly like contentment. "This changes things," Krell said quietly. Ryan's second transmission arrived 3 days later. He'd set up a more permanent camp and was giving a tour while explaining his water purification process. Bruno appeared in the background, dragging a massive branch to add to some construction project. "So, the key is understanding that not all dangerous water is equally dangerous to all species," Ryan explained, holding up a canteen. "My biology can handle higher acid levels than most. I still filter it twice and add purification tablets, but the base water here is actually pretty clean if you avoid the algae blooms." He demonstrated his filtering setup, a combination of technology and improvised natural materials. Then he showed how to identify safe versus unsafe water sources by the color and smell. "Back on my colony, we had to do this all the time. You learn to read the environment instead of fighting it." Ryan poured himself a cup and drank. "See? Still alive." The video ended with Bruno investigating the camera, his massive face filling the frame before a paw knocked the device over. Ryan's laughter played over the image of purple sky. The Xenobiology department published a preliminary report on human interaction based on the videos. It got picked up by major science networks. Suddenly, everyone wanted to know more about these humans who could befriend Death World predators. Educational channels started broadcasting Ryan's transmissions with expert commentary. Scientists analyzed his survival techniques. Military strategists debated the implications of human environmental adaptation. In a bar on a trading station, a group of off-duty soldiers watched Ryan's latest video. He was teaching viewers how to build a proper fire pit to avoid forest fires while Bruno helpfully demonstrated what not to do by knocking over the woodpile. "That's the planet that killed my training instructor," Vraxian said quietly. 3-day mission. He lasted 4 hours. The human has been there for 2 weeks. Someone else added, and he is treating it like a vacation. Look at the predator. A third soldier said, it is relaxed around him. My xenobiology instructor said Ursanthrax cannot be domesticated. They're too aggressive. On screen, Bruno rolled over for belly rubs while Ryan explained proper campsite selection. The soldiers looked at each other and ordered another round. Commander Hayes received new orders from High Command. Where before they'd written Ryan off as a casualty, now they wanted detailed reports, survival data, environmental analysis, behavioral observations of local wildlife, everything. Hayes sent a message to Ryan explaining the situation. The response came back 2 days later. Hey, Commander. Sure, I can send reports. No problem, but I'm kind of busy setting up a more permanent base. The research station is about a day away now. I'll get there soon. In the meantime, here's this week's fishing tutorial. Bruno's getting really good at it. The attached video showed Ryan teaching Bruno to fetch dropped fishing line. The massive predator performed the task with surprising gentleness, carefully holding the line in his teeth and bringing it back without tangling it. Hayes watched it and shook his head. Then he saved it to the growing file labeled Cole Ryan Vort 7 Survival Documentation. On a council world, debates raged in academic circles about the implications. If humans could survive on death worlds, what did that mean for territorial classifications? Vorti's 7 and dozens of planets like it had been deemed uninhabitable, keeping them unclaimed in neutral space. But if humans could colonize them, everything changed. Some species saw opportunity, others saw threat. A few saw partnership possibilities. Earth's diplomatic corps suddenly found themselves invited to meetings they'd never been considered for before. The home planet of the species that could turn death worlds into camping trips had become very interesting to the galactic community. None of which Ryan knew or particularly cared about. His latest transmission showed him building a fish trap in a stream while explaining the basic principles of sustainable harvest. Bruno supervised from a sunny rock, occasionally offering unhelpful commentary in the form of curious growls. The key is to take only what you need and leave enough for the population to sustain itself, Ryan explained, setting stones in careful patterns. You're not trying to empty the river. You're trying to live alongside it. He placed the final stone and sat back satisfied. There. Now we wait for the fish to swim in and we'll have fresh food without having to actively hunt every day. Bruno appreciates this because it means more nap time. On cue, Bruno yawned enormously and flopped onto his side. The video ended with Ryan's voice. Next time, I'll show you how to identify edible plants. Some of the local vegetation is actually pretty tasty if you know what to look for. Stay safe out there. Across the galaxy, millions of beings from hundreds of species watched a human and his death world pet living peacefully on a planet that had killed everyone else who tried. The research station appeared through the trees like a metal skeleton, half consumed by purple vines and rust. Ryan stood at the edge of the clearing, studying the structure while Bruno sniffed the air suspiciously. What do you think, buddy? Home sweet home. Ryan adjusted his pack and started forward. Bruno growled low, his ears flat against his head. The massive predator didn't follow. Ryan stopped and looked back. In 2 weeks of traveling together, Bruno had never refused to follow him anywhere. That bad, huh? The building itself was standard Galactic Alliance design, a modular research facility meant to house 20 people comfortably. The blast doors hung open at odd angles, one completely off its tracks. Scorch marks blackened the walls around the entrance, and something had torn deep gouges in the metal plating. Okay, I see your point. Ryan pulled out his rifle and checked the charge. But I came all this way, might as well take a look. He approached carefully, watching for structural damage or signs of instability. The entrance gaped like a mouth, dark and unwelcoming. His flashlight beam cut through the darkness, illuminating overturned furniture and scattered equipment. Inside, the air was stale, but breathable. Emergency lighting flickered in some sections, powered by backup solar cells that somehow still functioned. Ryan moved through the corridors slowly, piecing together what had happened. The main lab was a disaster. Specimen containers had shattered, their contents long since dried or decomposed. Research notes lay scattered across the floor, some stained with substances Ryan chose not to identify. A personal data pad sat on one desk, its screen cracked, but still holding a charge. He picked it up and scrolled through the last entries. Day 47, supply ship delayed again. Council says weather conditions prevent safe landing, we are rationing food. Day 53, Jenkins developed a reaction to the atmospheric spores. Medical supplies running low. Still no ship. Day 61. Water filtration system failing. The local water is too acidic for our species. We attempted to boil it, but the chemical composition does not change with heat. 3 team members sick. Day 68. No contact from Council in 6 days. I think they have abandoned us. Day 71. We are going to try to survive on local resources. Dr. Yennett believes some of the plant life may be edible if processed correctly. The entries ended there. Ryan found more data pads scattered throughout the facility, each telling a similar story. A research team slowly dying because they couldn't adapt to the environment around them. In the sleeping quarters, he found environmental suits still hanging in lockers, state-of-the-art equipment designed to protect wearers from hostile atmospheres, but suits needed maintenance and power, and eventually they'd failed. The team had starved while surrounded by food they couldn't digest. They died of dehydration next to rivers they couldn't drink from. They'd frozen in their climate-controlled suits when power ran out, unable to tolerate the natural temperature. Ryan sat in the main control room and read through the research logs. The team had been studying Vort's 7 ecosystem, trying to classify it for the Galactic database. Their conclusion, written before things went bad: uninhabitable for colonization. Recommend permanent quarantine. You were wrong, Ryan said to the empty room. It's not uninhabitable. It's just uninhabitable for you. He found the data cores in a sealed vault exactly where the mission briefing said they'd be classified research that Command wanted recovered. Ryan downloaded everything to his portable drive and backed it up twice. Then he explored the rest of the facility with new purpose. The power system still worked, fed by a geothermal tap that would run for decades. The structure was sound despite the cosmetic damage. The gardens where the team had tried to grow their own food were overgrown, but the hydroponics equipment could be salvaged. This wasn't just a tomb. It was a base. Ryan spent the day clearing debris and assessing what could be repaired. The kitchen area had basic cooking equipment. The sleeping quarters had actual beds, though he'd need to replace the mattresses that had rotted. The lab space could be converted into storage or a workshop. As the sun set, he stepped outside and found Bruno waiting at the tree line, still refusing to enter the clearing. I get it. Bad smells, death smell. This place killed people and you can tell. Ryan walked over and sat beside the massive predator. But it doesn't have to be a graveyard. We could make it something else. Bruno huffed and pressed his head against Ryan's shoulder. I'm thinking we set up properly here. The power works. There's shelter from the storms and it's close to that good fishing spot we found yesterday. Ryan scratched behind Bruno's ears. But I need you to be okay with it. We're a team. If you hate this place, we'll find somewhere else. The predator looked at the building, then at Ryan, then back at the building. Finally, he stood up and took a cautious step toward the clearing. Ryan followed, moving slowly. Together, they crossed the open space and approached the entrance. Bruno's fur bristled and his muscles tensed, but he didn't run. At the doorway, Ryan stopped. We go in together or not at all? Bruno sniffed the entrance thoroughly, growled at it, then stepped inside. The massive predator explored the corridors with Ryan, investigating each room with careful suspicion. When they reached the main control room, Bruno sat down heavily and looked around as if claiming the space. Good call. This can be our base of operations. Ryan started pulling out his camping gear. First thing tomorrow we air this place out properly and start cleaning. Then I need to send Command an update. That night, they slept in the control room with all the doors open to let fresh air flow through. Bruno insisted on sleeping between Ryan and the entrance, a protective barrier against anything that might wander in. Ryan lay in his sleeping bag, looking at the ceiling panels that still glowed with faint emergency lighting. The research team had seen Vortiz 7 as an enemy to be survived until rescue came. They'd fought the environment instead of adapting to it. He understood why most spacefaring species evolved on gentle worlds with stable climates and abundant resources. They'd never needed the kind of adaptability that humans developed. Earth had been harsh, unpredictable, and dangerous for millions of years. It had forced humanity to learn flexibility or die. That same harshness that had nearly driven humans extinct had also made them perfect for places like this. Ryan pulled out his communication gear and recorded a new transmission. "Hey, Command, it's Ryan. I made it to the research station, found the data cores you wanted. They're secure and backed up." He panned the camera around the control room, showing the equipment and the sleeping Bruno. "I'm going to set up a more permanent base here. The facility is mostly intact, power systems work, and it's in a good strategic location." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I also found the previous team's logs. I know what happened to them. They couldn't adapt to the environment and their support systems failed. I want to send my condolences to their families through proper channels. They died trying to do their jobs." Ryan looked directly at the camera, but their conclusions about this planet were wrong. Vortiz 7 isn't uninhabitable. It's just selective about who can live here. I think with the right approach, planets like this could be valuable for human colonization. There are resources here, stable ecosystems, and plenty of space. Bruno snored in the background, a rumbling sound that echoed through the room. "Anyway, I'll send detailed reports on everything I've found. Ryan out." He cued the transmission and settled into his sleeping bag. Outside, Vort 73 moons lit the clearing in pale light. Somewhere in the forest, something howled. Bruno's ear twitched, but he didn't wake. Ryan closed his eyes and smiled. Tomorrow, he'd start making this place a real home. The Galactic Council chamber hummed with tension as representatives from 40 species gathered for an emergency session. On the main view screen, Ryan's latest transmission played for the third time. He stood beside a river demonstrating proper fishing technique while Bruno splashed in the shallows behind him trying to catch fish with his paws. The human looked relaxed, healthy, and completely unbothered by the death world around him. "And if you angle the line like this, you can reach the deeper pools where the bigger fish hang out during the day," Ryan explained, casting smoothly. "Brun prefers the shallow runners, but I like a challenge." Bruno emerged from the water with a fish in his mouth, looking proud. "Good job, buddy. Yeah, you're getting better at that." Ambassador Krell stood and gestured for the video to pause. 3 weeks ago, we classified Vortiz 7 as uninhabitable. We wrote off the human as a casualty. Now, he is giving fishing lessons with an apex predator as his assistant. The human appears to be thriving. A Taurian representative observed his latest medical data shows improved physical condition compared to when he left the academy. That is precisely the problem. A Vraxian delegate said if humans can colonize death worlds, it changes the entire territorial balance. There are hundreds of planets classified as uninhabitable that contain valuable resources. We left them unclaimed because the cost of exploitation was too high. You mean the cost of survival was too high for your species? A human diplomat said quietly. She was new to the council representing Earth's growing political presence. For us, these environments are challenging but manageable. The chamber erupted in debate. Some species saw opportunity in partnership with humans for resource extraction on hostile worlds. Others worried about humans claiming territory that had been considered worthless. A few openly discussed the security implications of a species that could survive anywhere. Ambassador Krell called for order. The question before us is not whether humans can survive on death worlds. Clearly they can. The question is what we do with this information. We could restrict human access to these planets. Someone suggested. On what grounds? The human diplomat asked. The territories are unclaimed. Galactic law permits colonization of unclaimed worlds. We could reclassify them as protected environmental zones. After leaving them abandoned for centuries, the legal challenges would be substantial. Krell watched the debate spiral and thought about the broader implications. Earth had been mostly ignored by the galactic community. A high-gravity world that produced stubborn, adaptable people with limited resources, useful as soldiers or laborers, but not politically important. That was changing rapidly. The video continued in the background. Ryan had caught a fish and was showing how to clean it properly while discussing which parts were safest to eat. Bruno watched with intense interest, drool dripping from his jaws. "We need to send a team to retrieve the human," a military advisor suggested. "Study his methods, document his survival techniques. He has already sent detailed reports," Commander Hayes said via remote link. "Ryan has been extremely cooperative with all requests for information. He is a cadet following orders. Then order him to return." Hayes shook his head. He completed his mission. He recovered the data. Everything else he is doing is voluntary. We have no grounds to force his return. Offer him a promotion, better pay, a position at the academy, someone else suggested. "We tried that," Hayes admitted. "He said he's happy where he is." The council chamber fell silent. On screen, Ryan was now teaching Bruno to retrieve dropped fishing equipment, rewarding the massive predator with treats. The beast performed the task with surprising gentleness. "The human has domesticated an ursenthrax," a xenobiologist said in wonder. "Every paper on the species says that is impossible. They are too aggressive, too territorial." "Perhaps the papers were wrong," Krell said. "Perhaps we have been wrong about many things across the galaxy." Ryan's vlogs continued to spread. Educational networks broadcast them with expert commentary. Scientists analyzed his techniques. Children on multiple worlds watched Bruno's antics and begged their parents for similar pets, not understanding that Bruno was a trained predator, not a toy. Military strategists studied Ryan's approach to hostile environments. Corporations began investigating human partnerships for resource extraction on previously inaccessible worlds. Real estate speculators started quietly buying up survey rights to Death World planets. Earth's government found itself negotiating partnerships and treaties. With species that had barely acknowledged them before, the humans who could turn uninhabitable worlds into homes had become very valuable allies. Commander Hayes received a message from High Command with new orders. Ryan was to be promoted to full officer status, given command of Vort 7 research operations, and asked to prepare detailed colonization feasibility reports. He forwarded the message to Ryan and waited. The response came 2 days later in video form naturally. "Hey, Commander Hayes. Thanks for the promotion. That's really cool." Ryan stood in what looked like a cleaned and organized research station control room. Equipment hummed in the background and through the window purple forest was visible. "I accept the posting as research liaison for Vortis 7. Happy to help with colonization studies." He walked to the window and gestured outside. "I've been mapping the area and I think the southern continent would be best for initial settlements. Better water access, less seismic activity, and the local fauna is less aggressive. I can send detailed geographic data if you want." Bruno appeared in the frame, carrying what looked like a small tree branch in his mouth. He dropped it in a corner and looked expectantly at Ryan. "Yeah, I see it. Good job finding firewood." Ryan scratched the predator's head. "Bruno and I have been working on making the station more comfortable. I've got the hydroponics bay working again and started growing some earth vegetables. Tomatoes are doing great, actually." He returned his attention to the camera. "About the request to return for debriefing, I'm going to have to decline. There's too much work to do here, and honestly, I really like it. This feels like home now, but I'm happy to do video conferences and send regular reports." Ryan paused, then smiled. "I know everyone's making a big deal about me surviving here, but it's really not that complicated. You just have to respect the environment instead of fighting it. Pay attention to what the planet is telling you and adapt. These are skills any human with decent survival training has." He gestured around the station. The team that was here before tried to make Vort 7 fit their needs. They brought their own food, their own water, their own atmosphere. When that support system failed, they had nothing. I'm trying the opposite approach. I'm fitting myself to Vort 7 needs, learning what it offers, working with what's here. Bruno knocked over a piece of equipment and Ryan moved to pick it up without breaking his explanation. Anyway, I'll keep sending updates. Next week, I want to explore the cave systems to the east. Bruno thinks there might be good shelter there for when the heavy storm season starts. Oh, and could you send me some more fishing line in the next supply drop? I'm running low. Ryan out. The transmission ended with Bruno stealing the camera and running off with it while Ryan yelled in mock anger. Commander Hayes saved the video and wrote his response to High Command. Ryan had found his place. Trying to force him back would be both cruel and pointless. Besides, the data he was sending from Vortiz 7 was revolutionary. His casual vlogs contained more useful information about Death World survival than decades of formal research. On multiple worlds, human colonists started volunteering for assignments to harsh planets. Young people watched Ryan's adventures and wanted their own. Earth's colonial administration found itself overwhelmed with applications. Ambassador Krell watched all of this unfold and realized the galaxy had fundamentally underestimated humanity. They had seen humans as useful soldiers, decent laborers, adequate traders. They had missed what made humans truly special. Humans could thrive anywhere. Not through superior technology or overwhelming force, but through adaptability, stubbornness, and the willingness to make friends with 800-pound predators. If that's what it took to survive. The galaxy was about to get much more interesting. 6 months after Ryan landed on Vort 7, a formal transmission arrived from Galactic Command. It was marked urgent and came with official seals from multiple departments. Ryan played it on the research station's main screen while eating breakfast. Bruno lay nearby, gnawing on a bone from yesterday's hunt. The message was from Commander Hayes himself. Cadet Cole, or rather Lieutenant Cole, given your recent promotion, we have a formal extraction offer. You've completed your mission far beyond anyone's expectations. The data you've sent has revolutionized our understanding of Death World colonization. You can come home a hero. Full honors, commendations, your choice of postings. Hayes paused and his expression softened. But I know you, Ryan. I know what your answer will be. So this is also permission to establish Vortiz 7 as an official human research colony with you as primary administrator. We'll send supply drops monthly. You'll have support resources. Whatever you need, just say the word. The message ended with coordinates for reply transmission. Ryan finished his eggs, a perfect scramble made from supplies in the last drop shipment. He looked around the station that had become his home. The control room was organized now with his personal touches everywhere. Photos on the walls showing Bruno doing silly things. A shelf with interesting rocks and plants he'd collected. His fishing rod mounted above the door. Through the window, purple forest stretched to the horizon. Morning light filtered through the canopy, creating patterns on the moss. A small herd of herbivores grazed in the clearing, completely unbothered by Bruno's presence anymore. They'd learned he only hunted outside his territory. What do you think, Bruno? Should we go back to the academy, sleep in barracks, eat cafeteria food, follow regulations? Bruno looked up from his bone and made a sound that Ryan had learned meant absolutely not. Yeah, I agree. Ryan set up his camera and hit record. He positioned it so the view included both him and the window behind him showing the vibrant alien landscape. Hey, Commander Hayes, thanks for the offer, and I mean that sincerely. It's nice to be appreciated, but I'm going to stay on Vortiz 7. This place has become home in a way nowhere else ever was. He gestured to the station around him. I've built something real here. The hydroponics garden is producing more vegetables than I can eat. I've mapped 300 square km and documented over 100 species. Bruno and I have established peaceful relationships with most of the local predators through a combination of respect and clear boundary setting. Bruno wandered into frame and flopped down beside Ryan's chair looking for attention. Ryan scratched behind his ears absently. I'd like to accept the position as colony administrator though, because I think Vortis 7 could support a small human settlement, maybe 50 people initially growing from there. The southern continent has everything we'd need. Fresh water, arable land, rich mineral deposits, and an ecosystem that's actually pretty stable once you understand it. He pulled up a map on his data pad and showed it to the camera. I've identified 3 potential settlement sites. This one here has the best natural harbor and protection from the major storm tracks. I can have detailed proposals ready within a month. Ryan paused and his expression became more serious. I know my success here has caused some political complications. I've been following the news feeds when the satellite links work. I want to be clear about something. Vortis 7 and places like it aren't prizes to be claimed or resources to be exploited. They're ecosystems that deserve respect. He looked out the window at the forest. The research team that died here, they saw this planet as hostile. But it's not hostile. It's just different. It has its own balance, its own rules. Humans can live here, but only if we adapt to it, not force it to adapt to us. Bruno rolled onto his back, requesting belly rubs. Ryan complied while continuing his message. I guess what I'm saying is yes, humans can colonize death worlds, but we should do it thoughtfully. These places have value beyond what we can extract from them. They're beautiful and complex and worth preserving, even as we live alongside them. A notification beeped. Another supply drop was scheduled for next week. Ryan had submitted a request for more seeds, some medical supplies, and replacement parts for the water filtration system. Anyway, I accept the administrator position. I'll start preparing for eventual colonists, but there's no rush. Bruno and I are doing fine on our own for now. And honestly, I want more time to fully understand this place before we bring in a whole community. He stood up and walked to the window, camera following. The view was spectacular. Purple and green forest, distant mountains, one of Vort's 7 moons still visible in the morning sky. You know what's funny? Everyone keeps calling me brave or exceptional for surviving here. But I don't feel brave. I just feel like I finally found where I fit. Earth was too crowded, too civilized. The academy was too structured. This place with all its challenges and dangers feels right. Bruno joined him at the window, standing on his hind legs to look out. His massive frame barely fit in the space. I think humans are meant for places like this. Not because we're tough or superior, but because we're adaptable. We can find home anywhere if we're willing to work for it and respect what's already there. Ryan turned back to the camera. I'll send the detailed colonization proposals soon. In the meantime, I'm going to continue documenting everything and sending regular vlogs. People seem to enjoy them, and if they help others understand how to live on harsh worlds, that's worthwhile. He grinned. Plus, Bruno's becoming a celebrity. I got a message last week from a children's education network asking permission to use clips of him for their xenobiology program. I said, yes, obviously. He's very photogenic. On cue, Bruno knocked over a plant container while trying to investigate a strange smell. Dirt scattered across the floor and sometimes very clumsy. Okay, I need to clean that up. Ryan out. He ended the recording and started cleaning the mess. Bruno tried to help by eating the spilled dirt, which didn't help at all. The months that followed established a rhythm. Ryan sent weekly updates showing his progress on the settlement proposals. He documented seasonal changes in Vort's 7 ecosystem. He taught Bruno increasingly complex tasks, partly for practicality and partly because it was fun. Other humans began arriving for short research visits, staying a few weeks before returning to civilization. They were always shocked by how comfortable Ryan had made the station, and how relaxed Bruno was around familiar humans. One visitor, a xenobiologist named Dr. Patel, spent a month studying the local wildlife with Ryan's help. On her last day, she stood in the station looking around. "You've really built something special here," she said. "This doesn't feel like a research station anymore. It feels like a home." "That's because it is," Ryan replied simply. A year after his arrival, the first permanent colonists came. 5 humans carefully selected for their survival skills and adaptability. Ryan met them at the landing site with Bruno beside him. The newcomers stared at the massive predator with a mixture of fear and awe. "Everyone, this is Bruno. Bruno, these are our new neighbors. Be nice." Bruno sniffed each person carefully, then sat down and yawned, showing all his teeth. The colonists laughed nervously. Ryan helped them settle into prepared housing units near the research station. He taught them what he'd learned about the local environment, shared his maps and observations, introduced them to the rhythms of Vortice 7. Within 6 months, the tiny colony was thriving. They'd established gardens, built proper infrastructure, and started families. More humans applied to join them. Within 2 years, the population reached 30. Ryan's vlogs continued, now showing not just survival techniques, but community building on a death world. Bruno appeared less frequently as he'd claimed territory in the deeper forest, though he visited regularly and had even found a mate, another Urcenthrax who tolerated the strange humans. Commander Hayes retired and moved to Vort 7 himself, saying he wanted to spend his final years somewhere interesting. He and Ryan would sit on the station's porch in the evenings, watching the 3 moons rise while discussing expansion plans. "You changed the galaxy, you know," Hayes said one night. "Human colonies on 40 death worlds now, all following your model," Ryan shrugged. "I just went camping and sent some videos. Everyone else did the real work. That's exactly why it worked. You didn't try to conquer anything. You just showed people that adaptation beats domination every time." In the forest, Bruno's distinctive roar echoed. His cubs answered with higher-pitched calls. The sound made Ryan smile. "You ever regret staying?" Hayes asked. Ryan looked out at the alien landscape he'd learned to love, thought about the community they'd built, remembered the journey from expendable cadet to colony founder. Not even once. Above them, a shooting star crossed the sky. Down in the settlement, someone was playing music. Human laughter mixed with the sounds of Vort's 7 night creatures. Ryan pulled out his camera from habit and recorded a short message. "Hey everyone, Lieutenant Ryan Cole here with an update from Vort 7. Population is 32 now, 33 if you count the baby due next month. Bruno's cubs are growing fast and are surprisingly friendly if you bring treats. The gardens are producing enough food that we're actually building food storage." He panned the camera across the settlement, showing warm lights in windows and people moving between buildings. "I guess the lesson here is simple. There's no such thing as a death world, just planets that require different approaches. Respect the environment, adapt to it, build relationships with it, and anywhere can be home." Bruno appeared at the edge of the clearing, his massive form briefly visible in the moonlight before he melted back into the forest. Ryan smiled at the camera. "Thanks for watching, and remember, the best adventures are the ones where you find exactly where you belong. Stay curious out there." Ryan out. He turned off the camera and sat back. Content. Tomorrow he'd help with expanding the water system. Next week, survey a potential new settlement site. Eventually, maybe explore the southern continent properly. But tonight, he just enjoyed being home.